Every Tuesday night, when my son visited, I noticed the bitter aftertaste in my chamomile tea. At first, I chalked it up to old age, but then, one day, I found a crumpled receipt in his jacket pocket. Arsenic trioxide, 50 milligrams. My heart sank. The boy I had sold my kidneys to send through medical school, the son I gave everything for, was poisoning me, slowly, quietly, with the same hands I had once held when he was small. I started saving every laced cup in the fridge, a silent witness to his betrayal. Let him try to explain to the jury why his fingerprints are on the poison, and mine aren't. Mothers always know, especially how to wait for justice, for truth, for the moment when the world realizes what they've done. The chamomile's bitterness clung to my tongue long after the cup was empty. It reminded me of the aspirin I'd chewed through back-to-back night shifts at Mercy General, back when Daniel needed braces. The orthodontist had patted my shoulder. Single, mom rates, just for you, like I should have been grateful to trade sleep for my son's smile. I'd sold my wedding band to pay his first semester's tuition. The pawnshop owner had frowned at the inscription James and Lillian, 1989, but counted out $1,200 without comment. That night, Daniel brought home a B on his anatomy midterm. "Relax, Mom, it's just undergrad," he'd said, tossing the paper on the counter. I'd swallowed the urge to remind him that the ring had outlasted his father's fists. The sacrifices had piled up quietly. The second mortgage to cover his MCA prep course, the eviction notice when I fell behind on rent after his emergency spring break trip to Cancun, the way his med school friends called me adorable when I served them burnt casseroles in our cramped apartment. I'd worn exhaustion like a second skin, but never regret. Not when he nailed his residency match. Not when he bought his first Porsche. Not even when he introduced me to Vanessa with "Don't mind her, she's old school." But now, staring at the receipt in my shaking hands, arsenic trioxide, 50 milligrams, Dr. Daniel Wright, PharmD, the memories curdled. All those years of swallowing pride, of stitching my love into the silence between his complaints. And this was my reward. A slow, meticulous murder from the boy who'd once sobbed over a dead goldfish. The fridge hummed as I slid the tainted teacup onto the top shelf, beside the others. 6 weeks worth, 6 weeks of him watching me cough into napkins, of Vanessa murmuring she's fading fast while refilling my cup. I pressed my forehead to the cold stainless steel. James had hit me in broad daylight, but our son, he'd learned to bruise, where no one would see. The kitchen clock ticked like a countdown. I pretended not to notice Daniel's fingers twitching toward my teacup when he thought I was distracted by the oven timer. His wedding band, the one I'd mortgaged my mother's pearls to buy, glinted as he stirred in an extra spoonful of honey. "For your throat, Mom," he said, too sweet. The same tone he'd used at 8 years old, confessing he'd fed my anniversary roses to the neighbor's goat. This time, I didn't smile. I let him watch me take 3 deliberate sips before feigning dizziness. "Must be my blood pressure again," I murmured, clutching the counter. His pupils dilated, not concern, but triumph. That was when I knew. The next morning, while Daniel golfed with his residency director, I smuggled the teacup to Marjorie Thompson, retired head of toxicology at St. Luke's, still sharp at 82. She took one whiff and went very still. "Lillian, you've been ingesting arsenic." The confirmation landed like a dull knife between my ribs. Marjorie's lab results, printed on floral stationery, as if softening the blow, showed 0.8 milligrams per cup, enough to mimic dementia, not enough to kill quickly. Medical precision. My son, the gastroenterologist, had prescribed me a slow, undignified unraveling. I sat in my Buick outside Marjorie's condo for 43 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles cracked. The same hands that had once stitched Daniel's forehead after James threw him into the coffee table. "Clumsy kid." James had growled, signed mortgage papers in the ICU waiting room, while Daniel's appendix scar still wept blood, waved through the rearview mirror as I dropped him at Columbia. My vision blurred from 3 night shifts in a row. Now they trembled over a lab report that might as well have been a death sentence at home. I found Daniel's stash tucked behind the rarely used fondue set. Pharmacist's file labeled potassium supplement in his neat block print. The irony burned. I'd spent years swallowing calcium pills to combat the osteoporosis from carrying his 9-pound birth weight. That night, I watched him watch me sip my medicated tea. His tell was always the left thumb tapping his knee, like when he'd lied about wrecking the Pontiac at 16. "You're looking better today," he lied, refilling my cup to the brim. I held his gaze as I drained it. "Must be the extra honey." His smile faltered for half a second. Long enough, I excused myself to nap and vomited into the guest bathroom toilet, flushing twice. Then I took photos of the vial with the timestamp app Marjorie recommended. The tiles were cold against my cheek as I slid to the floor. James had left bruises in the shape of belt buckles, but this meticulous, sterile violence was worse thought. My phone buzzed with Marjorie's follow-up text, "Called in a favor at the lab. Full talks, screen ready when you are." I typed back one word, "tomorrow." Outside, Daniel's Audi purred as he left for his night shift. I counted to 100 before moving. The teacup went into a Ziploc bag, the vial into my bra, the shaking. I let it come, just this once. The nausea arrived in waves after every family dinner, though family had become a hollow word, like a rotted-out tree still standing from force of habit. It started with the headaches, then the tremors in my left hand, the one Daniel would cluck over, pressing 2 fingers to my wrist like the dutiful doctor. "Low potassium," he'd declare, sliding another pill across the table. The same pills I later found matched the arsenic vial's imprint. I began keeping a ledger in the back of my recipe book, the one with Daniel's favorite meatloaf scribbled in the margins. March 12th, dinner at Daniel's. Accidentally switched plates when Vanessa answered door. He looked ... annoyed. 3 a.m. Vomiting. Metallic taste. April 3rd. Random blood work ordered by Dr. Chen, Daniel's golf buddy. Results. Lost. Found white powder in sugar bowl. Marjorie confirmed arsenic. April 17th. Let's have mom move in. Vanessa T.E. Daniel's face went pale. Not part of his plan. The patterns crystallized like frost on a grave. The concerned interventions, his sudden insistence on weekly checkups with colleagues. How they'd nod solemnly while he listed my symptoms that only appeared after his meals. The isolation playbook, gently steering me away from bridge club germs. Mom, deleting Marjorie's calls from my phone, wrong number. Canceling my newspaper to depressing. The gaslighting garnish. "You forgot to take your meds again," he'd sigh, pocketing the real pills. Or, my favorite, "At your age, confusion is normal." Spoken by the child who'd once needed flashcards for multiplication tables. The cruelty was in the details. Using my good Wedgwood teacup, the one James had shattered and I'd glued back together to serve the poison. The way Vanessa would rub my shoulder afterward. Her diamond bracelet, a gift from my reverse mortgaged house, catching the light last Tuesday. I let myself collapse after dessert. Mom. Daniel's panic wasn't for MIT, was for his timeline. I watched through slitted eyes as he checked my pulse with one hand and texted with the other. Probably to Dr. Chen, need faster results. When the ambulance came, I whispered to the EMT, a girl no older than Daniel had been when I held his hand through strep throat. "Keep the IV bag where I can see it." Her eyes widened, but she nodded. Smart girl. That night at the hospital, I stole 3 urine sample cups. 1 for the arsenic test. 1 for the malpractice lawyer Marjorie recommended, and 1 to leave conspicuously empty on Daniel's desk tomorrow. Let him wonder. The hospital bathroom smelled of antiseptic and old oranges. Locked in the stall, I finally let the tears come hot. Silent things that dripped onto the stolen urine cups, clutched in my hands. 30-4 years. That's how long it had been since I last cried like this. Sneezed, pulled to my chest on another cold floor, James' belt still swinging in the doorway. Back then, Daniel had been a feverish weight in my arms, his tiny fingers tangled in my hair. "Don't cry, Mommy," he'd whispered, though his own face was streaked with snot and terror. Now, the child I'd sold pieces of myself to protect was selling me to the grave. A sob ripped through me so violently, I bit my fists to muffle it. The taste of salt and hospital soap flooded my mouth. I thought of all the things I'd swallowed over the years. Pride, when the PTA moms whispered about my thrift store coats. Rage, every time James came home smelling of another woman's perfume. Hunger, literal and endless. Skipping meals so Daniel could have seconds. The mirror showed a stranger when I finally stumbled to the sink pail, puffy-eyed with 4 tapes still clinging to her wrist. This wasn't the face of the woman who'd worked double shifts with pneumonia, who'd stood between James and Daniel's crib that last night, taking the blows meant for his tiny body. My reflection blurred, then a sound from the hallway. Daniel's voice, low and urgent. Needs to be tonight. The dosage isn't. The tap was still running. I watched, frozen, as the water rose over my trembling hands, swirling with tears down the drain. Something in me hardened. I turned off the faucet, dried my face with a paper towel, placed the urine cups carefully in my handbag. Tears wouldn't save me, but proof would. Back in my hospital room, Daniel was arranging flowers. Lily, my least favorite. You gave us a scare, he said, adjusting my four with practiced hands, the same hands I'd once guided around a bicycle's handlebars. I made my voice wobble. Did the doctor say? Early dementia, most likely. He didn't meet my eyes, but we'll take care of you. Vanessa hovered in the doorway, clutching discharge papers. Her diamond bracelet caught the light, the one bought with the equity from my house. I let my eyelids flutter shut. So tired. Rest, Mom. His lips brushed my forehead. I'll bring your favorite tea tomorrow. The door clicked shut. Only then did I open my eyes to the blinking red light on the voice recorder in my sweater pockets still running. Marjorie's text came as the shift changed. Alarm blared. Toxicology confirms. Call the lawyer. I typed, one-handed around the 4-needle. Wake him up. Outside, the moon was a sliver like the paring knife I'd hidden under my mattress last week. Small, sharp, waiting. The game began at breakfast. I let my fingers tremble, just enough to spill orange juice across Daniel's pristine countertops. Oh dear, I murmured, watching the liquid pool around his medical journals. His jaw tightened not at the mess, but at how perfectly it mirrored the neurological deterioration he'd described to Dr. Chen. It's fine, Mom. He forced a smile, sponging the juice with quick, irritated strokes. I studied the way his wedding ring caught the light, the same ring I'd paid for by selling my mother's pearls. Vanessa, I asked, tilting my head like a confused child. A beat of silence. Then, too loud, I'm Daniel, Mom, your son. The performance was delicious. That night, I accidentally left the stove on. Daniel came running at the smoke alarm's shriek, face flushed with panic. Were you trying to cook? I just wanted tea, I whispered, clutching my robe with shaking hands. He exhaled through his nose the same exasperated sigh he'd given his father at 12, when James forgot his birthday. From now on, let us handle the kitchen. Perfect. While they slept, I worked. The hair samples, every strand from my brush, went into dated Ziploc bags. Marjorie had explained how arsenic lingers in keratin, like a confession. The email's subject, hypothetical question. If a 6'8" female presented with nausea, tremors, and white striaton nails, what tests would you order? Asking for a character. In my novel. Dr. Rosen, retired head of neurology, now mystery novelist, replied within hours. Lillian, call me, the little forgetful nestling. My wedding photo face down, by mistake, when Vanessa visited, asking Daniel to repeat stories about his childhood, the ones where I was the villain, confusing his nurse friend's name with his high school girlfriend's. How's Rachel? Still working at the hospital? The more confused I seemed, the sloppier he became. By Thursday, he stopped hiding the arsenic vial. It sat boldly in his shaving kit, labeled Mom's Supplements. I snapped photos with the phone. He thought I'd forgotten how to use . Then came the masterpiece. At Sunday dinner, I stared blankly at Vanessa. Have we met? Her fork clattered against her plate. Daniel's hand shot out to steady her, just like I'd taught him when he was 5 and she was a wobbling bicycle. This is getting worse, he muttered, rubbing his temples. Not worried, annoyed, I let my gaze drift to the hallway mirror, where the reflection showed Vanessa mouthing to Daniel, how much longer? Behind them, my face remained carefully blank. But, in my pocket, the voice recorder ran. I bought the journal from the same stationery store that once sold Daniel his kindergarten notebooks. The pages smelled faintly of lavender, Vanessa's favorite scent, the one she spritzed like perfume on the euthanasia pamphlets she accidentally left in my room. The entries began small. April 12th, the headaches are worse today. Sometimes I think it would be kinder if I didn't wake up. I left it peeking from under my pillow. The spine creased at just the right angle to suggest frequent use. That night, I heard Daniel pause outside my door. The silence stretched 3 full minutes before his footsteps retreated. The next morning, my tea tasted sweeter. April 18th, dreamt of James last night. He said the afterlife doesn't hurt. Wouldn't that be nice? This time, I forgot the journal. Open on the kitchen table, a pen resting across the page like a scalpel. Vanessa found it first. Her gasp was audible from the hallway. By dinner, Daniel was watching me with new intensity, not concern, but the hungry calculation of a chess player spotting checkmate. I leaned into the role. Left. Do not resuscitate. Forms half filled in my nightstand. Let them catch me staring too long at the razor in Daniel's bathroom slip, and showed them the suicide hotline on my phone's recent calls there. Reactions were textbook. Vanessa started wearing her diamond bracelet less, as if preparing for mourning. Daniel began leaving the arsenic vial in my line of sight testing. Tempting. The final entry sealed it. May 1st, I've hidden Dad's old pistol in the attic. When the confusion gets bad enough, I'll use it. Better than wasting away. Better than being a burden. I placed the journal in my underwear drawer, then deliberately took a long shower. When I returned, the air smelled of Vanessa's nervous sweat. That night at dinner, Daniel's fingers drummed against his wineglass. We're thinking of converting the attic into a guest room, he said too casually. Wonderful, I murmured, cutting into the steak he'd seasoned himself. I do love. Hosting the attic would be empty, of course. Just like the pistol case James had pawned decades ago, but they wouldn't know that. As I excused myself, I let my hand brush the voice recorder in my pockets still running. Let them whisper about attics and pistols. Let them hurry their plans. Every rushed step would leave more evidence in its wake. The law office of Hartman and Green smelled like leather and lemon polish, the same scent as the shoes I'd worn to Daniel's medical school graduation, back when I still believed he'd use that degree to heal rather than harm. Eleanor Hartman slid the updated will across her mahogany desk. You're sure about this? Her pen hovered over the witness line. I traced the embossed lettering with my thumb. Last will and testament of Lillian Marie, right before nodding. Absolutely. The changes were surgical in precision. Revocation of all prior wills, especially the one Daniel had helped me draft last year. Power of attorney granted to my sister Margot, who'd once slapped Daniel for stealing her pain meds. Explicit exclusion of Daniel Wright listed by full name. Like a disease, Eleanor's paralegal notarized the documents with a satisfying thunk of her stamp. Most parents leave something to their children, she murmured. I smiled. Mine did. Outside, I texted Margot, the confirmation our old childhood code. The fox has new teeth. Her reply came instantly. About damn time. Next stop, the bank. The safe deposit box swallowed my new will, the hair samples, and a USB drive containing every incriminating recording. The manager, a woman with crow's feet deeper than mine, eyed the thick envelope. Family photos, something like that. I slid her the key. If I don't renew this in person by June 15th, she glanced at the in case of deceased instructions. Your sister gets everything, and my son gets nothing. That evening, I accidentally left the lawyer's card on the fridge. Daniel found it while pouring his third whiskey. Hartman and Green. His voice cracked. Since when do you need an estate planner? I stirred my tea sipped from a sealed bag I'd brought in my purse. At my age, it's prudent. His fingers whitened around the glass. I could practically hear his thoughts. She knows. She's fighting back. Vanessa appeared, smelling of Chardonnay and panic. We should be involved in these decisions, Lillian. Of course, dear. I patted her hand, leaving a faint arsenic residue from my gloves. Your family. Upstairs, I counted to 100 before opening my laptop. The security footage showed Daniel tearing through my bedroom, pausing at the empty space where my jewelry box used to be. Margot had it now, along with my mother's pearls, my wedding photos, and every other artifact he'd planned to sell. I typed an email to Eleanor, filed the restraining order tomorrow. Then, I turned off the lights and lay in the dark, listening to Daniel pace below. Each step was a confession. Each creak of the floorboards, countdown. I wore the lavender dress to dinner, the one Vanessa had bought me last Mother's Day, back when she still pretended I'd live to see another. Its sleeves hid the bruising from yesterday's blood draw at Daniel's clinic. The table was set with my grandmother's china, the delicate rose pattern chipped from decades of use. Daniel filled my glass himself, the burgundy liquid, swirling like old blood. Your favorite, he said, too loud, the same tone he'd used at 6. Lying about eating the last cookie. Vanessa brought out the roast, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she served me first. Extra gravy, Lillian, kindness she'd never shown before. I counted their tells, Daniel's left thumb tapping his steak knife, his tell since childhood. Vanessa's overbright laugh when I complimented the potatoes, the way they exchanged glances every time I lifted my glass. I waited until dessert. Peach cobbler, Daniel's favorite, not mine. As Vanessa cleared the plates, I stumbled, reaching for my wine. The glass tipped, splashing crimson across the tablecloth. Oh, I clutched the table edge, dizzy. Daniel was up instantly, refilling my glass from the decanter. Drink this. His fingers trembled slightly. I took a deliberate sip, then switched our glasses when he turned to fetch napkins. His own wine sat untouched, pristine. Vanessa hovered behind me, her breath hot on my neck. Maybe you should lie down. No. I waved her off, my rings clinking against his glass. Just need to hydrate. I took 3 slow swallows of his wine. Then I let my eyes roll back. The collapse was theatrical, chairs screeching, limbs splaying, the thud of my skull just grazing the edge of the table. Pain flashed bright, but I kept my breathing shallow. Mom, MOM. Daniel's hands gripped my shoulders, shaking. Not conspiratorial. His plan was unraveling too fast. Through slitted eyes, I watched Vanessa snatch my wineglass and drain it. No evidence, she hissed. Daniel's phone was already out. I'm calling an ambulance. No. Vanessa knocked the phone from his hand. You said it would look like a stroke. A beat of silence. Then dash. The front door burst open. Margot stood framed in the doorway. Hartman and Green's lead paralegal behind her. Funny, my sister said, holding up her recording phone. Because that sounded like a confession. Daniel froze, his face draining of color. I chose that moment to revive, clutching my chest with one hand and the empty wineglass with the other. What happened? Vanessa's scream shattered the silence. The room smelled like spilled wine and sweat. Margot stepped forward, her boots clicking against the hardwood, the same rhythm she'd used marching into my childhood home to rescue me from James. This time, she held a phone instead of a baseball bat. Let's all stay calm, Daniel said, his doctor voice cracking. He reached for me, but I flinched away with a whimper, clutching the wineglass to my chest, like a victim. Like prey, Vanessa lunged for Margot's phone. You have no right. Oh, I think she does. I sat up slowly, wiping the feigned dizziness from my eyes. The voice recorder in my pocket was already playing, tinny but clear, Daniel's voice, whispering, 2 more doses and the symptoms will be irreversible. By the time anyone suspects, she'll be too confused to testify. A beat. Then, Vanessa's reply, crisp with disdain. Just make sure the will's signed first. Daniel's face went slack. That's edited. Margot tossed a manila envelope onto the table. Funny, the toxicology report from St. Luke's says otherwise. The pages spilled out, hair analyses, urine tests, the receipt for arsenic from Daniel's pharmacy account, and the photo. My son's elegant fingers dropping a white powder into my teacup, timestamped 3 days ago. Vanessa made a sound like a cornered animal. You set us up. No, I said, standing without a trace of illness. I just stopped letting you lie. Daniel's hands twitched toward his medical bag. Margot blocked him, her smile razor thin. Looking for these. She held up the vial she'd stolen from his clinic yesterday. The paralegal spoke for the first time, reading from her iPad. Under California Penal Code 368, elder abuse with intent to kill carries a life sentence. Vanessa's bracelet clattered against the table as she gripped it. We were helping her. She wanted to die. She wrote it in her journal. This journal. I pulled the lavender notebook from my purse, flipping to the last entry, the one written in Vanessa's own looping script. Daniel says we need to hurry. The life insurance payout isn't enough for the new house. Daniel made a choked noise. That's not. Sirens wailed outside. I watched my son's face fracture, the same expression he'd worn at 7, when he broke his favorite toy and realized some things can't be fixed. The police took them in separate cars. Vanessa sobbed about following his lead. Daniel just stared at me through the cruiser window, his mouth moving silently. Why? I touched the locket at my throat, the one holding his baby teeth, instead of arsenic. Margot squeezed my shoulder. You okay? The first real tear burned down my cheek. Ask me tomorrow. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and regret. Vanessa's screams echoed down the hallway, shrill enough to make the fluorescent lights flicker. You said she was too old to fight back. Her diamond bracelet scraped against the interrogation table as she lunged at Daniel. You monster. Detective Ruiz barely blinked. He'd seen this before: greedy children, poisoned parents. The only surprise was the arsenic. Most just overdosed their moms on opioids, he muttered. Flipping through Margot's meticulously organized binder, Daniel sat perfectly still in his chair, hands folded like he was back in church. The same pose he'd mastered at 10 years old. When the social worker asked about the bruises, "I want a lawyer," he said. Ruiz slid a photo across the table, Daniel's own handwriting on the pharmacy receipt. "Already called your hospital's legal team," they said. He checked his notes. "Oh right, we don't defend murderers," Vanessa exploded. "I didn't know. He told me it was just sedatives." "Bullshit." Margot leaned in the doorway, holding my trembling shoulders. "You tasted the wine yourself, knew exactly what was in it." I said nothing, just watched my son's fingers tap out a nervous rhythm, the same one he'd used memorizing drug dosages in med school. The DA arrived with 2 charges: attempted murder of an elder, enhanced sentencing, medical license, revocation, effective. Immediately Vanessa turned state's witness before they finished reading her rights. "He kept the arsenic in our safe," she sobbed, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. Next to our wedding photos, Daniel finally looked at me. Not with remorse, but cold calculation. "Mom, you don't really want this." The room held its breath. I reached into my purse and placed 3 items on the table. His first ultrasound, "It's a boy," scrawled in my handwriting, the pawn ticket from my wedding ring dated the week of his MCATs, a plastic baggie containing every strand of hair I'd saved. "You're right," I said softly. "I wanted a son." The silence that followed was broken by Vanessa's hysterical laughter. "God, Daniel, you really thought she'd forgive you?" They led him away in handcuffs. No last words, no dramatic confession, just the squeak of his loafers against linoleum, the same shoes I'd bought him for his residency interview. Outside, the sunset painted the parking lot gold. Margot lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "He'll get 10 years, minimum." Stared at my reflection in the police station window, wrinkled, exhausted, free. "Not enough." "No," Margot agreed, blowing smoke at the stars. "But it's a start." The state medical board revoked Daniel's license before his trial even began. Vanessa filed for divorce the next week, citing irreconcilable differences, a neat euphemism for attempted matricide. She kept the house, the Porsche, and every piece of jewelry he'd bought with money borrowed against my life. The kids stopped visiting him after the sentencing, changed their last names to Vanessa's maiden name, Benetand, sent back his prison letters unopened. I know because Emily, my eldest granddaughter, showed up on my doorstep one rainy afternoon holding a shoebox of returned mail. "He keeps writing us about forgiveness," she said, her voice trembling, "like we're the ones who need to apologize." I made her hot chocolate in my new kitchen, the one with a view of the ocean, paid for by the sale of Daniel's confiscated assets. He got 12 years. Minimum security. I never visited, but sometimes, when the wind blows just right off the water, I swear I can hear him whispering from that courtroom, "You were supposed to love me unconditionally." And I whisper back to the empty house, "I did." The for sale sign went up the day after Daniel's sentencing. I didn't hold an estate sale, didn't sort through decades of memories, just packed a single suitcase with my mother's pearls, the locket holding Daniel's baby teeth, and the voice recorder that had sealed his fate. The rest, the wedding china, the family photos, even James' old leather charai left for the realtor to donate. "Margot helped me pick the Villa Tuscany," she said, pointing at a sun-drenched stone house on her laptop. "No extradition treaties, just in case." I laughed for the first time in years. The young couple who bought my house reminded me of who we might have been. Tied, their hands clasped tight as they walked through the empty rooms. "It's perfect," the wife breathed, running her fingers along the kitchen counter where I'd once packed Daniel's school lunches. I handed them the keys without looking back. Italy smelled like lemon groves and old wine. My villa had terracotta floors that stayed cool underfoot, and a wrought iron balcony where I drank espresso each morning. Watching the sunrise paint the valley gold, Margot visited every summer, smuggling American candy in her suitcase and gossip about the old neighborhood. Vanessa moved to Florida, she told me last June, kicking off her sandals. The Porsche got repossessed. I stirred my limoncello and said nothing. The nightmares stopped after the first year. No more waking in a sweat, reaching for a teacup that wasn't there. No more phantom bitterness on my tongue. Last month, a postcard arrived with no return address. On the front, a blurry photo of San Quentin. On the back, a single line in familiar handwriting. "Do you ever miss me?" I fed it to the fireplace, watching the edges curl black. Then, I walked out into my sunlit garden, where the rosemary grew wild and the neighbors' laughter floated over the stone wall. Poison taught me something: the quietest mothers make the deadliest enemies, but survival. Survival tastes like fresh basil and sea salt, like freedom.